Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It's Sunday. That means we're here for the weekly recap of all the top stories throughout the week, conveniently located in one location. And, well, enjoy the show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. And remember, the Constitution matters.
All right, lawyer.
Been a lot of talk over the last couple of weeks here about these leaked images, the crime scene images in the Kohberger matter. So let's back up, and then I want to tell you what evil looks like, right? I can't show you what evil looks like, but I can describe it. I got it here on my screen, and you're going to be able to see it as well. So, in a recent development surrounding the 2022 University of Idaho murders, a collection of nearly 2,800 previously unreleased crime scene photographs had surfaced, offering a stark glimpse into the aftermath of the brutal killings. Now, these images, briefly made available online by the Idaho State Police before being removed, highlighted the profound contrast between the victims' vibrant daily lives and the violent events that claimed them. Now, the photographs obtained through public records requests underscores the senseless nature of the crimes committed by Brian Kohberger, who obviously is pled guilty and now been sentenced, and he pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. And let me tell you why, because when you hear what he did, he knew that the jury was going to give him the death penalty. He knew he was going to lose, and he knew he was going to get death. So as you know by now, the victims, Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were students at the University of Idaho, residing in the off-campus house on King Road there in Idaho. Now, the residence depicted in the images as a quintessential college home, featuring scattered empty beverage cans, discarded high heels, and unwashed dishes, reflecting the carefree routines of young adults enjoying their weekends. Wall decorations, such as a banner proclaiming Saturday night is for the girls, and motivational quotes like "the universe has big plans for me," emphasize their optimism and obviously their young energy. Now, according to details from the photographs, Kohberger allegedly entered the property through an unlocked rear door around 4 a.m. on November 13th. He proceeded to the upper floor where Gonzalez and Mogan were sleeping in the same bed following a night out. Images reveal blood-soaked beddings and spattered walls in Mogan's room, with an untouched mood board of inspirational messages hanging nearby, creating a somewhat haunting juxtaposition. Now, adjacent areas show everyday items left undisturbed: a laptop on a desk and amid unfinished assignments, jewelry on stands, and half-consumed drinks, all frozen in time. Kohberger then descended to the second floor, targeting Kernodle's bedroom, where she and Chapin were spending the night. The photographs of this space are particularly disturbing, displaying overturned furniture, smeared blood on cabinets and floors, and redactions over mirrors and beds to conceal graphic elements. Now, the evidence of a struggle is evident in the disarray, including displaced items and trails of blood, suggesting the victims resisted the attack. Throughout the house, applications of luminol, a substance that detects trace blood, illuminated blood glows on the stairwells, banisters, and walls, revealing the extent of the violence, even seemingly unaffected areas. Now, the Idaho State Police officials explained that the images were initially released in response to numerous public inquiries, but were withdrawn for review to address privacy concerns. Now, a spokesperson stated that the agency aims to balance transparency with the sensitivity toward the affected families, and revised versions may be reissued. Now, while direct depictions of the victims or their bodies were redacted, obviously, and the overall scenes conveys the intensity of the assault, including structural damage where blood seeped through the building's exterior. Now, the release has prompted, obviously, emotional reactions, particularly among the parents and peers who see parallels to their own lives. Now, the absence of the clear motive, Kohberger had no known ties to the victim, amplifies the tragedy's impact, leaving many to grapple with the randomness of the act. Families of the victims have expressed frustration over the plea deal, which is obviously it's a done deal by now, and there's nothing that can be done about that. They avoided a trial and may have denied them, obviously, some closure. Now, these photographs serve as a somber reminder of the lives interrupted, promising young individuals whose futures were abruptly ended in a place meant for safety and camaraderie. Now, as the investigation into the leak continues, the images reinforce the enduring public interest in underscoring the full scope of the heinous event. Now, I have said that I think that there should be complete and total transparency, not only in the Kohberger case, but frankly, in any case that's of public interest. And even if it isn't in public interest, everyone should be able to do that. And I say that not because I have some gory desire to look at, autopsy photos or crime scene photos. Heck, I can open up a file and do that on my own in my own office if that was something I wanted to do. Okay. But I've seen enough of those over the years. Frankly, they don't faze me. Okay. I've often said I could eat my lunch looking at autopsy photos. It just doesn't faze me anymore because I think I've seen so much of it, unfortunately. But the reason why I say people need to see what's going on out there is because they need to be able to see and identify, okay, what true evil looks like. Now, remember, there are still people out there that think Brian Kohberger is innocent, regardless of the DNA, regardless of all his phone evidence, right? Regardless of the fact that he pled guilty in open court and engaged in a colloquy with the judge on the record where he admitted to killing 4 people after deliberation and the burglary as well, receiving 4 consecutive life sentences, knowing that he was going to go to prison for the rest of his life. Despite that, there are still people out there that believe that he is innocent. Okay. And somehow they choose to believe in some crazy notion. Oh, well, if you think about this and you think about that, then suddenly it's plausible that somebody else could have done this, even though he pled guilty to it. All right. And so what I was thinking about is there's a summary that was put out of the autopsies. Obviously, we don't need to do the autopsies, but what I'm saying is you need to be able to see what true evil looks like. Okay. And when you look at these, so this is autopsies. All autopsies were performed by the chief medical examiner and forensic pathologist, Veena Singh, MD, MPH, at the Spokane, Washington office of the medical examiner, Kaylee Gonsalves. Date and time of the autopsy, November 16th, 4:50 p.m. Cause of death, multiple sharp force injuries. Significant contributors to death, blunt force injuries of the head, asphyxial injuries. Significant findings include 1. Stab and incise wounds of the scalp, face, and neck 24 plus times. 24, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine what a K-bar coming down on somebody with full force some 24 times is going to do to them. Next, stab and incise wounds of the chest 11 times. Stab and incise wounds of the upper extremities 3. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. How is that not the epitome of premeditation? Puncture of the outer table of the skull, injuries to teeth and tongue, perforations of the subclavian artery and vein, hemorrhage into the chest cavities, blunt force injuries including scalp lacerations, bleeding around the brain, nasal fractures, scrapes on the nose and cheeks, bruising around the eyes, patterned bruises extended across the lower face. Petechial hemorrhages were present in the eyes and mouth, and the blood alcohol was 0.107. How about Madison Mogan's autopsy? November 16th, 2:25 p.m. Multiple sharp force injuries. Stab and incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck 13 times, ladies and gentlemen. Stab wounds to the chest 5. Incised wounds of the upper extremities 10. Wounds of the lung and liver, perforation of the subclavian vein, subclavian artery, and blood vessels of the chest wall. Blood alcohol, 0.282. Other findings, incisions of the nasal septum, perforation of the tongue and oral mucosa, fluid in the upper and lower airways. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. 13 stab wounds to the scalp, face, and neck. With this, a K-bar. Imagine that coming down 13 times. Another 5 times in the chest. Another 10 to the other upper extremities. He knew he was going to do that. And like I said, it's not some grotesque idea, but this is what the people need to see. Evil truly exists. And maybe you don't need to see it, I guess, but I think you should be able to if you want to. And so you can show it to people and say, this is what this guy did. And you really think he would plead guilty if he didn't do that? It's horrible. No one pleads guilty to something like that unless they did it. How about Miss Kernodle? Autopsy, November 16th. Cause of death, multiple sharp force injuries. Other injuries, abrasions and contusions of the head, torso, and extremities. Significant findings include stab and incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck 23 times. Stab wounds to the chest, 7. Stab wounds to the abdomen, 4. Incised and puncture wounds of the back, 3. Incised wounds of the upper extremities, 25. Wounds of the lower extremities, 5. Punctures of the outer table of the skull, perforations of the jugular vein, heart, lung, and pulmonary blood vessels, hemorrhage in the chest cavities, wounds extended into the bones of the right hand, scrapes and bruises on the face, torso, and extremities, blood alcohol 0.229. Also had an amphetamine level of 12 nanograms in the blood. Abundant, bloody, mucoid material in the airways. How about Ethan Chapin? Multiple sharp forced injuries, cause of death, stab wounds and incised wounds of the scalp, face, and neck. 4. Stab wounds to the upper chest. 1. Incised wounds of the upper extremity. 6. Stab and incised wounds to the lower extremity. 6. Perforation of the jugular vein, subclavian vein, and the subclavian artery. Blood alcohol content 0.122. Amphetamine level of 260 grams nanogram levels. So, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about this. I can't show you what evil looks like, but I can just read it to you and describe how many times. And you think about that. Think about that, all right? Something this size from a K-bar, scalp, face, and neck while somebody's asleep 24 times, ladies and gentlemen. So it's not for some sick or perverse things that people need to see that. People need to see and understand that true evil exists out there. And so next time something like this happens, you can say, oh yeah, that's evil. What he did was evil, ladies and gentlemen. And when he's pled guilty, it's game over. He is, as a matter of law and as a matter of fact, he is done. He admitted to it because he knew once the jury saw those photographs, he knew he was going to get the death penalty. And simply out of compassion, privacy, I guess, the court said, we're not going to release these images. But like I said, I'm of the mindset that the public has a right to know. They should be able to see what's going on in their community, who's doing what in their community. And so if there's any doubt as to whether A, got the right guy, and B, that he is truly, in fact, evil, you can simply take a look at those photographs, ladies and gentlemen. Rob Reiner's eerie premonition. He knew his son was going to harm him, possibly even kill him. So as we all know, the tragic deaths of the filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner, were preceded by a deeply unsettling moment at a holiday gathering where the director reportedly expressed profound fear regarding his son. On December 13th, 2025, Rob Reiner, who was then 78, attended the Christmas party hosted by comedian Conan O'Brien in his Los Angeles mansion alongside with his wife, Michelle, and their son, Nick. Now, according to multiple sources familiar with that event, Rob Reiner confided to others that he was petrified and believed his own son could harm him. Now, this statement describes as a shocking and heart-wrenching admission reflected the director's evident apprehension about Nick's behavior and potential for violence. He knew his son was going to kill him, ladies and gentlemen. He knew it. Now, attendees reported that Nick Reiner acted in obviously a disruptive and erratic manner during that gathering, which unsettled other guests. A heated argument erupted between Nick and his parents, escalating to a loud confrontation that prompted the host to discourage fellow partygoers from contacting police. Now, the family departed the event shortly thereafter amid the family tension. Anyway, the following day, December 14th, 2025, Rob Reiner and Michelle Reiner were discovered deceased, killed, murdered in their Brentwood residence, having sustained multiple sharp force injuries. Now, police determined that the deaths were a homicide, and Nick Reiner was arrested later that evening on suspicion of murder. He was subsequently charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, including special circumstances for multiple homicides and the alleged use of a deadly weapon. Now, Nick Reiner, the middle of the couple's third children, has had a documented history of substance abuse and mental health issues, including a prior year-long conservatorship in 2020 involving involuntary psychiatric treatment. Now, reports indicate recent adjustments to his medication may have contributed to increased instability. And as of January of 2026, his initial private defense attorney withdrew from the case, leading to representation by the public defender's office with an arraignment scheduled for February 23rd. Obviously, he remains in custody without bail, and prosecutors have not yet decided whether to pursue the death penalty. Now, obviously, this sequence of events has drawn significant attention because of the complexities of the family support in this case, and obviously the severe mental illness that obviously Nick Reiner has. Now, and it's even more significant given it's in a prominent household where he had the best medical treatment that money could buy, basically, and they still couldn't help him. Anyway, Rob Reiner's premonition at that party underscores the gravity of the concerns that preceded the tragedy. And obviously, this case is going to continue to unfold here in the next couple of weeks. But this just goes to show, ladies and gentlemen, and I hate to sound like the guy that just is negative, because I'm not. I'm the eternal optimist, right? I'm a defense attorney. I'm always hoping for the best. I'm always hoping for people to succeed, that they're gonna do well. But oftentimes, past performance is indicative of future results, and you have to be realistic. And sometimes, no matter how much money you have, how much support you have, it just isn't gonna matter. Sometimes some people are just not wired right. And no matter what you do, no matter how much love you give to them, how much medical treatment, mental health treatment you get them, at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. And the result is going to end like we see so constantly, where people with mental health issues ultimately wind up committing violent acts, oftentimes murder. And, you know, it is a difficult situation, but sometimes, and this is, sometimes the hardest part of my job is telling people what they don't want to hear. And not that I was ever Rob Reiner's attorney or, if I was talking to him, but somebody had to tell this guy, man, you just got to let him go. And I know they tried that. They said, go live on the streets. If you come back, you got to do treatment. He tried everything. I get it. It's a father's love for his son, but he knew deep down, and he literally predicted the future that night at that holiday party, that he was going to be murdered. And it's maybe sometimes being a little too optimistic, I guess, maybe hoping things are going to change, they're going to be different this time. And in reality, it was just the same old stuff, but the behavior just keeps escalating. That's right. The surgeon and the Ohio double murder. The surgeon that has been accused of stalking his ex-wife and burglarizing the home she shared with her current husband in the weeks leading up to their fatal shooting, according to recently released court documents. Now, Michael McKee, a 39-year-old vascular surgeon, faces 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary in connection with the December 30th, 2025 deaths of his former wife, Monique Tepe, and her husband, Spencer Tepe. Now, the couple was discovered deceased in their residence in the Wineland Park neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, from gunshot wounds. Monique with a wound to the chest, and Spencer with multiple wounds as well. Their 2 young children, aged 1 and 4, were present in the home and were not harmed, fortunately. Now, McKee, who was arrested in Chicago following a manhunt and extradited ultimately back to Ohio, has entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. Now, police have described the incident as a targeted attack linked to domestic violence. Well, these newly released details that we're talking about came from the probable cause affidavit that indicate that investigators identified McKee through surveillance footage showing him outside the Tepe residence on December 6th of 2025, approximately 3 weeks before the homicides. Now, at that time, the couple was attending the Big Ten championship game in Indiana with friends. Now, witnesses reported that Monique Tepe returned to her hotel room early during the event, visibly distressed over matters concerning McKee. The affidavit further alleges that McKee entered the home while the occupants were absent and remained for several hours before departing. He was reportedly observed in a silver SUV equipped with a sticker displaying a stolen Ohio license plate. Now, the vehicle registration records connected the SUV to addresses previously associated with McKee and a hospital where he had been employed. Additional evidence includes the absence of activity on McKee's cellular phone from late December 29th until afternoon on December 30th, aligning with the estimated time of the shooting shortly before 4 a.m. on December 30th. Now, they were also found a 9mm shell casing that were recovered at the scene. Now, court documents also detail prior allegations of abuse conveyed by Monique Tepe to friends and family, and she reportedly disclosed incidents of strangulation and non-consensual sexual acts by McKee during and after their marriage, which lasted from 2015 until their divorce in 2017, and the grounds for the divorce were incompatibility. Now, one witness stated that McKee had threatened Monique, asserting that he could kill her at any time and that he would always be able to locate her and that she would, quote, always be his wife, end quote. Another account indicated he claimed he could purchase a neighboring property to maintain proximity, and the couple's bodies were found after concerned colleagues and friends noting Spencer Tepe's uncharacteristic absence from the dental practice, prompting a welfare check and a call to 911. Police ruled out murder-suicide early in the investigation. Now, McKee remains in custody without bond as the case proceeds there in Franklin County. So that's going to be an interesting one. You know, this guy apparently was stalking the curtilage of the house, the outside of the house. And, you know, what can you say? Just weird and creepy behavior. Now, maybe he had some legitimate reason to go there and talk to her, but why not pick up the phone, call his ex-wife if he really had a need to speak with her? But it seems like things were kind of spiraling out of control for the old Dr. McKee there. And you would think a vascular surgeon could probably make a pretty good living and probably get himself a girlfriend, a new wife. But no. Something's weird. Just goes to show you, ladies and gentlemen, it can happen to anybody from any economic status whatsoever. You know, and the McKee, the Tepe family, obviously a tragedy all around. Now those two kids, they're orphaned. They're orphaned because allegedly this Dr. McKee killed their parents. We'll give them the presumption of innocence, but we'll see how that evidence plays out in the future. Next on the docket, Manhattan prosecutors seek a trial date as early as July in the Luigi Mangione case. And wait till you hear what somebody tried to do. That's right. So the Manhattan prosecutors have formally requested that the state murder trial for Luigi Mangione, obviously the man accused of shooting the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, commence on July 1st. This proposal aims to prioritize the state proceedings over the parallel federal case where the jury selection is tentatively scheduled to begin on September 8th. Now, in a letter submitted to the state Supreme Court Justice Gregory Caro, Assistant District Attorney Joel Siedelman emphasized that further postponement of the state trial until after the federal proceedings would unfairly prejudice the state's interest. He noted that the state's authorities participated in the investigation from its inception, whereas federal prosecutors became involved approximately 2 weeks following the incident and filed charges shortly after the state indictment. The prosecutors cited legal precedents supporting the state's position to proceed first, underscoring an overriding interest in adjudicating the alleged cold-blooded execution of Thompson within the state of New York, their jurisdiction. Additionally, under New York law, double jeopardy protections could preclude a subsequent state trial if a federal jury is impaneled or the federal case concludes with a guilty plea. I don't believe so. Separate sovereigns, separate crimes enhancing factors, not really a concern, but good argument to the judge, needless to say. Anyway, the scheduling request follows a recent federal court hearing where the U.S. District Judge Margaret Garnett outlined timelines for the federal case. Jury selection in that matter is scheduled to begin on September 8th, with the trial's main phase opening statements and testimony scheduled for October 13th. If the death penalty is not pursued, or January 11th, 2027, if capital punishment remains an option. Capital cases typically involve more extensive preparation due to their complexity. Yeah, more mitigation. That's about it. This is not a complicated case. It is not. It is a simple case. I mean, think about it. Let's say that Mr. Mangione allegedly went up to the CEO and punched him in the back of the head. Do you think we would spend all this time, dragging this case out for a year and a half? Of course not. All right, let's face it. Murder is usually an assault gone bad, a simple assault gone bad. Here, he shot him in the back as he was walking away from him, and then he fled the scene. They were able to track him down. He had the gun. He had his little memoirs of his alleged confession, preparation plan, consciousness of guilt with him. This is a 1-week trial where I reside and do cases, ladies and gentlemen. Now, New York will certainly make it more difficult. The feds will make it a little more difficult, but not as complicated as somewhere, like California or something like that. Maybe it goes 2 weeks. That's about it. So it's not a complicated case. I get it. You get super due process when the death penalty is on the table, and that's on the table in the federal system. It's not on the table anymore because the judge threw it out in the state court system for Luigi Mangione. So let's go try the case, and let's have cameras in there too. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Mangione's case, he faces state charges, including intentional murder, which carry a potential sentence of life imprisonment without parole. He has entered pleas of not guilty in both the state and federal cases. And the state case's next hearing is anticipated in May, when Justice Caro is expected to rule on defense motions to exclude certain evidence. I can tell you how that's going to come out. Denied. Now, prosecutors have asserted readiness to proceed by July with a remaining pretrial matter resolved in the interim. Needless to say, the defense is going to say, oh, no, it's a complicated case, Judge. We need time. We're so much work to do. Busy. We got to work on mitigation. We're still doing evaluations. We're still doing testing. There's no possible way we could probably do this case until early 2027. Oh, that's when we're going to do the death penalty case. So sometime next summer. Mark my words, that'll be the argument. It would be shocking if the defense said, let's go. And I've told you this before, and I'll say it again. Sometimes the best defense in a murder case is say, let's go, because the prosecution usually isn't ready as well, and they expect the defense to continue the case. Because this case occurred back on December 4th of 2024 when Thompson was fatally shot from behind by the alleged masked assailant, Luigi Mangione, while walking to a Midtown Manhattan hotel for the United Health Group's investor conference. Surveillance footage captured the entire event on video, and police recovered shell casings inscribed with the phrase delay, deny, and depose, allegedly referencing common criticism of insurance claims practices. Now, Mangione was apprehended 5 days later at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and evidence cited by the prosecution includes a 9mm handgun purportedly matching the murder weapon. Coincidence? I think not. Along with a notebook containing entries describing intent to target a health insurance executive. Consciousness of guilt, perhaps? In related developments, Mangione's defense team has described the proposed July 1st state trial date as unrealistic, citing the need for additional preparation amid the impending federal proceedings. The federal hearing for that is scheduled Friday, when Judge Garnett will address pretrial issues, including the viability of the death penalty and the admissibility of various contested evidence, i.e. the same stuff that the state tried to, or the defense tried to have suppressed in the state case. And now, on a bizarre related development, federal court filings say a man was arrested on Wednesday for allegedly impersonating an FBI agent and trying to secure Luigi Mangione's release from the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where he is being held. According to the affidavit that's been unsealed today, the man, identified as Mark Anderson, approached the intake area and claimed that he was an FBI agent with paperwork signed by a judge authorizing the release of a specific inmate. A federal law enforcement source has told the news that the inmate was, in fact, Luigi Mangione. When officers asked for credentials, Anderson allegedly showed a Minnesota's driver's license and then claimed he had weapons. The affidavit says he also displayed and threw at officers numerous documents related to filing claims against the Department of Justice. After Anderson was detained, a backpack in his possession was searched, and authorities say it contained a large barbecue-type fork and a round steel blade. Anderson was taken into custody, and law enforcement has stated that Mr. Anderson, who's 36, from Mangione, Minnesota, and had traveled to New York to have a job opportunity that didn't quite work out, and so he's been working in a pizzeria. Anyway, meanwhile, Mangione remains in custody, awaiting trial, and the prosecutors and the courts continue to map out which case goes first. Can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen. I guess when he wanted to go back to Minnesota and things didn't want to go out, he's going to take a gift with him. He's going to take Luigi Mangione. Luigi Mangione. He's free. Nick Reiner really, really hated his dad. All right. So about a month after Nick Reiner's allegedly stabbed his parents to death in their $13.5 million Brentwood home, more details are emerging about the state of mind leading up to the murders. Now, Nick remains in custody. Obviously, he's there without bail at the Twin Towers Correctional Facility in Los Angeles, and he has not yet entered into any type of a plea. He hasn't said not guilty. We haven't got to arraignment because, frankly, they think he's not going to be competent. Now, sources apparently close to the case indicate that he has been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, a serious condition involving symptoms of both psychosis and mood disorders like bipolar or depression. Now, roughly a month before the killings, his medications had been adjusted, but was apparently unhappy with the weight he was gaining because of the medications. And according to one insider, once that happened, he went completely off the rails. Now, if you gain a couple of pounds, we get it. Maybe it's a little water weight, maybe go walk it off a little bit. No. Going to kill your parents, not the appropriate thing to do. Just going on a limb there. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, it's still unclear whether Nick was using drugs again at the time of the murders, because if he was, that kind of takes away the NGRI, let's face it. And he also has a long history of substance abuse, which would make it somewhat plausible that he was high as a kite. And he also had 18 stints in rehab, and obviously he's a high rep learner. He once described himself in rehab as a nutcase. Now, some believe a relapse combined with the medication change may have triggered his violent episode fueled by meth or similar substances. Now, obviously, the murder weapon, it's unclear whether it's been recovered, but there are lots of sharp objects in the house for sure. Anyway, so this same source describes Nick as, quote, totally detached from reality, end quote, and he is completely unable to fully grasp what he is being accused of doing. And as we know, Alan Jackson withdrew from the case back on January 7th, and now he is being represented by the public defender. So perhaps the most striking news account comes from a guy by the name of Danny Sivler, a Wyoming resident who shared a room with Nick at his upscale Malibu rehab facility when they were just 15. He spoke to the Daily Mail, and Mr. Sivler said that the moment he heard about the murders of Rob Reiner and his wife, he immediately knew who was responsible. Now, this guy says, I would hate to see Nick try to plead guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity, this guy says, when in reality, he told me how much he effing hated his parents, especially his father. So, despite that resentment, Sivler emphasized that Rob, then in his 70s, and Michelle did everything possible to support their son. He says they were there for them at every single family group session and every therapy session. They didn't have to give me the time of day, but he played Frisbee with Rob Reiner. For God's sakes, they just wanted him to get well. The roommate originally described Nick as initially welcoming and funny, but with a side that could flip rather quickly. Their rapport soured after the roommate innocently compared Nick's appearance to Jet Travolta. Yeah, John Travolta's late son, which prompted an aggressive reaction. Nick got in his face, raised a fist, and required a staff intervention. Anyway, apparently there were some late night conversations after the lights went out. Silva left Mr. Sivler unsettled. As a 15-year-old dealing with his own shopping addiction, he found some of Nick's disclosures very, very chilling. Now, years later, learning of the stabbing, where Rob and Michelle were reportedly attacked in separate rooms while awake, left this roommate chilled to the bone. He reached out to mutual contacts from the rehab days, and everybody knew it was him. Anyway, Sivler stressed that this is a profound Hollywood tragedy. Rob and Michelle loved Nick and did everything that they could for him. They just wanted him to be well, and he did not want to be well, according to this gentleman. Now, Nick's arraignment is set for February 23rd, and a family spokesperson has stated that the Reiners have the, quote, utmost trust in the legal process, end quote. You know, it's funny when people come out of the woodwork like this to tell about their interactions with somebody that's accused of doing something wrong, or obviously somebody that's deceased, since he knew the Reiners as well, the parents. But you want to know whether they really, are they looking for their 15 minutes of fame? Did the Daily Mail reach out to them? You got to take all of that with a somewhat grain of salt, but it does show that there's a lot of animosity there. Now, in the movie that Nick Reiner wrote and his dad directed and helped produce, it was obvious that he and his dad were not pals. They were not good friends at all. And, Nick Reiner from there just seemed like he wanted to do whatever he wanted to do and not what anybody else wanted to do. And the rules didn't really apply to him because he thought, well, frankly, that he was kind of privileged. So